Okay, let's unpack this. I want you to imagine spending millions of dollars to build this absolute state-of-the-art supercomputer.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Right. So you buy the fastest processors on the market, you load it up with massive amounts of data, and you're ready to run these like incredibly complex, highly lucrative algorithms.
Sounds like a pretty massive investment.
It is. But to save a little time and money up front, you completely refuse to install a cooling system.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a terrible idea.
Right. What happens the moment you put that machine under any real operational stress, it just overheats.
Obvious.
The hardware physically melts down, and your massive investment becomes, well, a very expensive, very heavy paperweight.
That is a highly accurate way to visualize the problem.
It's like buying $1 million luxury car and just refusing to ever change the oil.
Exactly. The hardware inevitably seizes up, and the theoretical value of the machine just drops to zero. And that disconnect is precisely what we're exploring today. We're taking a deep dive into a really fascinating set of materials from Greenbridge Inc.
Specifically a document titled Episode 2, Health is Wealth.
Right. And there's a very striking visual right at the beginning of their materials that honestly sets the entire tone.
Oh, the logo graphic.
Yeah. It's a human heart, completely filled to the brim with gold dollar coins, and this heart is cradled by these vibrant, healthy green leaves.
Right, and it's so easy to glance at that and just think, oh, it's a cute thematic graphic for a financial brochure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's not just decorative. I mean, it is a literal structural representation of the core thesis of this deep dive.
Which is what, exactly?
That your cardiovascular system, your physical health, your biological vitality, that is the literal physical container for your financial capital.
So without the leaves and the robust heart, the coins have nowhere to sit.
They just scatter.
And for those of you listening right now, that is exactly why our mission today is so critical. We are here to dismantle the very dangerous myth that building wealth requires sacrificing your health.
That's a huge myth.
It really is. And this isn't just some, generic public service announcement reminding you to eat your vegetables.
Right.
This deep dive is going to uncover the actual biological mechanics of how your physiological habits dictate your financial decisions. We're talking about the physical infrastructure of your wealth.
To understand how this works, we first have to look at how Greenbridge fundamentally redefines the concept of an asset.
Right, because normally if you ask a traditional financial advisor to list your assets, they're going to point to your real estate.
Your stock portfolio.
Yeah, maybe a high-yield savings account or a business you own.
Exactly. But the materials here actively challenge that traditional definition. They explicitly state, quote, "You are an investment, and your body is your first and greatest asset."
That's a huge shift in perspective.
It is. They're placing the human biological system at the very top of the balance sheet, above any liquid capital.
And they make a very direct side-by-side comparison between health and wealth.
They do.
Under the health column, they make the case that lifelong wellness equals lifelong prosperity. They even point out that physical movement actively improves emotional control.
Which is huge for investing.
Totally. And then, over on the wealth side of the ledger, they draw a hard line. They warn that poor health actively reduces productivity and income.
The exact phrasing is, you can't build long-term wealth in poor health.
But I have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
If you look at modern society, right, especially the business and startup worlds, we are completely drowning in hustle culture.
Oh, absolutely.
For you listening right now, you might be thinking, I don't have time to sleep 8 hours. I have a company to run.
Right. If I rest, my competitor wins.
Exactly. We're constantly told by motivational speakers to skip sleep, outwork everyone else, and grind while they rest.
The whole sleep when you're dead mentality.
Yes. The prevailing cultural narrative is that physical sacrifice is the required down payment for financial freedom. So how does this framework actually reconcile that?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, hustle culture is actually pushing a massive mathematical fallacy.
Really?
Yeah, it's the paradox of the hustle. The idea that you can endlessly extract energy from a biological system without replenishing it. It just violates basic physiological laws.
Because the machine eventually melts down.
Precisely. Working to the point of chronic illness or sleep deprivation doesn't accelerate wealth. It guarantees a massive reduction in long-term income.
Oh, wow.
You ultimately end up spending the wealth you generated just to desperately buy back a fraction of the health you destroyed in the process.
So you're basically financing your medical bills with your startup capital.
That is exactly what you're doing. And to counteract this deeply ingrained cultural programming, the source introduces a psychological tool called the Greengrit Affirmation. The affirmation is simple. It's, I am a healthy wealth builder.
Wait, before we get into the affirmation itself, let's break down that term, green grit.
Sure.
It feels like a portmanteau, but what is the actual intent behind combining those specific words?
It's a fusion of two very distinct concepts. Green represents both biological vitality, like the green leaves in the logo we talked about, and financial growth or wealth.
Okay. And the grit.
Grit is the psychological resilience and perseverance required to maintain discipline over decades.
I see.
So green grit is the endurance to maintain both your biological and financial ecosystems simultaneously.
That makes a lot of sense.
By forcing you to say healthy and wealth builder in the exact same breath during that affirmation, it fuses the two concepts. It's a cognitive reprogramming technique.
To train your brain to stop viewing your body and your bank account as like competing interests.
Exactly.
You stop seeing sleep as a competitor to your productivity and start seeing it as a compounding asset, which actually brings us to the next major revelation here. We establish the physical body as an overarching asset, but the materials zoom in on a very specific biological mechanism that acts as a wealth destroyer.
The brain.
Yes, we're moving from the macro view of the body straight into the micro view of the brain. Let's talk about the cognitive economics of stress.
The terminology there is highly appropriate. The framework draws a rigid, undeniable line between the state of your central nervous system and the state of your wallet.
Which is terrifying, honestly.
It argues that stress directly impacts spending and drives poor financial decision-making.
And on the flip side.
Conversely, healthy habits support clarity and discipline. But the absolute pivotal takeaway from the text, the one that really anchors this entire concept, is this idea: you cannot pour from an empty cup or invest well from an exhausted mind.
Invest well from an exhausted mind. Let me throw another analogy at you to see if this makes the underlying mechanism clear.
Heard.
Making a complex investment choice, or even just trying to stick to a strict monthly household budget while you're mentally exhausted and chronically stressed,
Yeah.
it feels to me like the financial equivalent of going to the grocery store when you are absolutely starving.
Oh, that is a perfect comparison.
Right. When you walk down the aisle and your stomach is empty, your brain isn't thinking about, long-term nutritional goals or meal prep for the week.
No, it's in a panic state.
Exactly. You end up impulsively grabbing junk food, sugary, highly processed stuff just to soothe that immediate agonizing discomfort.
You just want the pain to stop.
So are we basically doing that same thing with our money when our nervous system is shot?
What's fascinating here is how perfectly your grocery store analogy aligns with the actual neuroscience of financial behavior.
Really?
Yeah. When you're starving, your brain demands immediate caloric relief, totally bypassing rational thought. And when you are chronically stressed or physically exhausted, your brain is just flooded with cortisol.
Stress hormone.
Yes. And that cortisol literally dampens the electrical activity in your prefrontal cortex.
And the prefrontal cortex is the logical planner.
Right, exactly. It's the part of your brain responsible for long-term planning, risk analysis, and impulse control.
So it's your inner financial advisor.
Right. And when you're exhausted, the prefrontal cortex goes offline, and your amygdala, the emotional reactive center of the brain, just takes over completely.
Wow.
So when the source warns about the exhausted mind, it is talking about a literal physiological deficit. You were trying to do high-level math with a calculator that has no batteries.
So the financial planning department of the brain just closes up shop for the day.
The doors are locked, the lights are off.
That is wild.
This is exactly why maintaining regular movement, balanced nutrition, and wellness routines isn't just about looking good in a mirror.
It's functional.
It is about actively preserving the cognitive bandwidth you need to analyze a fluctuating market, to negotiate a salary with your boss, or simply have the discipline not to make a panicked emotional trade when a stock dips.
Physical wellness is the literal fuel for financial discipline.
Correct.
Okay, so if a regulated, healthy body creates the cognitive bandwidth for wealth, the framework doesn't just stop with the individual. It actually scales this idea outward, which completely reframed how I think about this.
The family unit?
Yes, it moves from personal health to the family wellness dividend. The materials insist that family wellness sets the stage for longevity and prosperity.
And they provide a very specific list for that.
They do. They provide a quick family wellness checklist. Hydration, daily movement, nutrient-rich eating, quality sleep, and stress management rituals.
Right.
But here's where it gets really interesting for me. I am looking at a document published by an entity focused on capital, wealth building, and prosperity.
Right.
Why on earth is a wealth document so deeply concerned with the daily, mundane routines of an entire family?
It seems like a leap, doesn't it?
It does. How does making sure my teenager is drinking enough water or getting enough sleep have any impact whatsoever on my household's financial bottom line?
Well, it seems disconnected until you realize that a family operates exactly like a mini economy.
Okay, unpack that for me.
A household is a highly sensitive, interconnected ecosystem. Think of the family like a corporate board of directors.
Okay.
If one person on that board is chronically sleep-deprived, poorly nourished, and highly stressed, that stress acts as a contagion.
It spreads to everyone else.
It bleeds into every interaction. Arguments increase, patience decreases, and the baseline anxiety of the entire house just spikes.
The collective cortisol levels of the house go up.
Precisely. And what did we just establish about high cortisol and an exhausted mind?
It leads to terrible financial decisions.
Exactly. When the household is in a state of high friction, people seek out immediate dopamine hits to soothe the stress.
The junk food in the grocery store analogy.
Yes.
Yeah.
But in a family, that manifests as impulsive retail therapy. Or, ordering expensive takeout because everyone is too exhausted to cook.
Or booking a vacation you definitely can't afford just to escape the pressure cooker of the house.
Spot on.
So by implementing shared physical routines like cooking nutrient-rich meals together or ensuring everyone is hydrated, you are essentially stabilizing the local economy of your living room.
You are creating a baseline of shared emotional stability. A calm, well-rested family is far less likely to bleed capital through emotional spending.
That is such a powerful way to look at it.
Furthermore, they're less likely to incur massive medical debts from preventable lifestyle diseases down the road. The health habits of the family act as a defensive moat around the family's wealth.
It shifts wellness from being a solitary, selfish pursuit at the gym to a collective financial strategy.
Beautifully put.
So we understand the cognitive economics, we understand the family ecosystem, but if cortisol is hijacking our wallets, how do we actually stop it tomorrow morning?
We have to take action.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How do you, the listener, take this Greengrit philosophy and execute it? The materials actually transition into an operational section called the Episode 2 Greengrit Homework.
And the homework provides 3 specific steps to get started.
Let's hear them.
Item 1 is to continue reading 1 to 5 pages from the recommended book list provided in their earlier materials.
Okay, continuous learning.
Item 2 is what we just discussed, creating and monitoring that personal and family wellness checklist.
Got it.
But item 3 is the core operational framework. It instructs the reader to incorporate the New START acronym into their daily routine.
Okay, let's break down every single letter of this NEWSTART protocol, because they are very specific about what each pillar entails, and we really need to understand the biological mechanism behind each one.
Let's do it.
The N stands for nutrition. They specify healthy, clean, wholesome food.
Right, and from a wealth perspective, clean nutrition provides steady glucose levels to the brain.
So no sugar crashes.
Exactly. You avoid the extreme sugar spikes and crashes that lead to that afternoon brain fog where poor, impulsive decisions are made.
Makes complete sense. The E is for exercise, which they note is for both physical and mental health.
Yeah, movement is actually the fastest way to flush excess cortisol out of your bloodstream.
Really, just flushing it out.
Yes, if you have a stressful day at the office, exercise physically metabolizes the stress hormones so you don't bring them home to the family ecosystem.
Protecting that local economy. I love it.
Exactly.
W is water, reminding us to hydrate each day. Now, I know dehydration can cause headaches, but does it really affect cognitive bandwidth that much?
Significantly. Even mild dehydration mimics anxiety in the brain.
You're kidding.
No, it temporarily shrinks brain tissue and reduces concentration, making it infinitely harder to process complex information.
Like reading a dense financial contract.
Or analyzing a balance sheet. Exactly.
Okay, S is sunshine. They highlight this as a source of vitamin D and a mood and immune booster.
Vitamin D regulation directly impacts serotonin production, and your mood heavily influences your risk tolerance.
How so?
A chronically depressed or pessimistic mood can make an investor overly risk-averse, causing them to miss out on compounding growth over time.
Oh, that's fascinating. And then we reach the T, which stands for temperance. The materials define this simply as balance and self-control.
Now, this raises an important question, and honestly, it is the linchpin of the entire framework.
Okay.
Of
Yeah.
all the physiological requirements, water, air, sunlight, why is temperance a behavioral trait sitting right in the middle of this protocol?
Let me guess. Because temperance is the mental muscle that makes all the other letters possible.
Exactly. Temperance is the ultimate bridge between health and wealth.
How does that work neurologically?
Think about the underlying neural pathways.
Mm.
The self-control required to bypass a fast food drive-thru and choose to cook a nutrient-rich meal at home
Right.
is the exact same mental muscle required to stick to a long-term investment strategy instead of chasing a volatile get-rich-quick scheme.
Oh, it's the classic delayed gratification model.
Yes.
You are training the discipline muscle in the kitchen, and then you are flexing that exact same muscle in your brokerage account.
The discipline to practice temperance is the foundational skill of both physical longevity and wealth accumulation.
Okay, moving through the rest of the acronym. A is for air. They specify detoxing, fresh air, and controlled breathing.
Deep, controlled breathing stimulates the vagus nerve.
Which does what?
Well, if you are looking at a market downturn and feeling panic, controlled breathing physically forces your heart rate down.
It stops the amygdala from hijacking the brain.
Exactly. It brings your prefrontal cortex back online so you don't panic sell your entire portfolio.
R is for rest, described as rejuvenation, specifically proper nightly rest by 10 p.m.
Sleep is when the brain literally flushes out the neurotoxins built up during the day.
It's the cleaning crew.
Yeah. Skipping sleep is like leaving the trash in your office to pile up for weeks. Eventually, you can't get any work done because there's garbage everywhere.
Great visual. And the final T is trust in God. From a biological or financial standpoint, how does this fit into the scaffolding?
Regardless of one specific theology, the psychological utility here is profound. Trust implies relinquishing the illusion of total control.
Which is hard for high achievers.
Very hard. But in wealth building, you cannot control macroeconomic trends, interest rates, or global markets.
You just can't.
Attempting to control the uncontrollable leads to chronic anxiety and over-tinkering with your investments.
Oh, right.
So trusting a higher power or a broader plan allows for psychological offloading. It lowers your baseline anxiety because you accept that certain variables are simply out of your hands.
So nutrition, exercise, water, sunshine, temperance, air, rest, trust in God. That is the complete New Start protocol.
That's the blueprint.
And looking at this incredibly structured homework, I couldn't help but notice a visual connection to the broader branding we mentioned earlier.
All the logo.
Yeah, the Green Bridging logo features a circle containing an upward trending arrow, and that arrow is supported by 4 solid, distinct pillars underneath it. It feels to me like this New Start protocol, these daily habits, are the literal scaffolding required to support that upward financial trend. You can't have the arrow going up without the pillars firmly planted on the ground.
The pillars represent structural stability. Without the daily scaffolding of hydration, sleep, movement, and temperance, any wealth you build is structurally unsound.
It's fragile.
It is built on a fault line of biological fragility. The upward arrow of prosperity absolutely requires the foundation of a resilient human nervous system.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener?
That's the big question.
If there is one thing to take away from this deep dive into Greenbridge's Health as Wealth framework, it is that treating your physical well-being as an afterthought, as something you'll, eventually get around to once you're rich, guarantees financial fragility.
It's a backward strategy.
Your body isn't an obstacle to your hustle. It is the engine of your prosperity. Lifelong wellness is the undeniable biological prerequisite for lifelong prosperity.
The math simply does not work any other way.
Right.
You cannot compound your capital if you are continuously depreciating your physiological assets.
Which brings me to a final thought I want to leave you with today. It's based entirely on the R in that New Start protocol rest.
The 10 p.m. rule.
Exactly. Specifically, the instruction to get proper nightly rest by 10 p.m. We are so deeply conditioned to think of wealth building as an active state.
Always moving forward?
Right. We think of it as doing, grinding, analyzing, working, building, moving.
Yeah.
But if an exhausted mind literally destroys your ability to make sound financial choices, then we need to entirely reframe how we view sleep.
It's not luxury.
No, know. Think about your current financial strategy. What if the single most lucrative, high ROI financial decision you can possibly make for your portfolio today is simply closing your laptop, turning off the lights, and going to sleep?
A provocative but biologically sound investment strategy.
As the source material leaves us in its final sign off, cheers to your green wealth journey.